And you've just heard Cairngorms by Adam Ross, taken from the album Staring at Mountains. And I'm so pleased to be joined by Adam now. Hello, Adam.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. I'm very well. And congratulations on Staring at Mountains, because it's a fantastic album. What can you tell us about it?
Well, thank you, firstly. Yeah, it's the first album under my own name. So I've been making music as Randolph Sleep, with Randolph Sleep for the last 10, 11 years. And it just felt right that this would be a sort of Adam Ross record. The influences on it were a wee bit different. I was listening more to sort of folk music and country music. It's very stripped back. It's just me and guitar and fiddle and a wee bit of backing vocals on there, whereas Randolph Sleep records tend to be everything plus the kitchen sink. That's the main difference really between the two things.
To give people an idea, at the last count, how many are in Randolph Sleep?
8.
8, yeah. So it's quite a big difference. I wondered as well if these songs seem quite self-reflective, and maybe I might be reading too much into that, but I was wondering why you chose to do them solo. You've kind of answered that a little bit, but was there any other reason as well?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, the lyrics, I think, are a bit more, as you say, self-reflective, a bit more interested in nature and the landscapes, a bit less tongue-in-cheek than some of the Randolph Sleep stuff, a bit more melancholic in places. Yeah.
And I mean, was that to do with I believe you moved fairly recently. I mean, recently in the last couple of years, kind of been written off. But was that a change for you? Was it a whole kind of reflecting on changing circumstance for yourself?
I guess that was part of it. I've moved a few times in the last few years.
Right.
I lived in Glasgow for, I think, about 7 or 8 years, and then I've been gradually working further north.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. So I was in Gargunnock near Stirling for a while, and then Lawrencekirk, and now I'm in St Cyrus on the coast. So I think that has probably influenced things, but yeah, I've always been a big fan of folk music and certain country music, and I've always been interested in the outdoors and nature as well. I was like, I'm now a freelance musician. I do a bit of teaching and a bit of gigging and recording and all sorts of stuff. But prior to going freelance, I worked in wildlife conservation.
Right.
So it's been a big sort of passion of mine, and it's a hobby as well. I'm a bit of a bird watcher, but I'd never really been able, I'd never figured out how to bring that into my songwriting without it being too earnest or a bit naff. But it's something I'd always wanted to do, and obviously there's a long tradition of nature and landscapes and the environment finding their way into lyrics and folk music. So this was the first time I feel like I've sort of managed to marry those two interests.
It's interesting you're talking about your songwriting, because I would think, knowing your songs previously, that you would almost be fearful of being too earnest. You'd like to undercut these things with, a rhyme or a play with words or something like that. But so being solo, was that almost freed you up to kind of do these more, I'm going to use the word mature, Adam, I do apologize, that kind of thing, do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's still a little bit of like wordplay and humor in the new album, but no, I think you're right. I think as well, making that change from it being a Randolph Sleep record to an Adam Ross record is that I was thinking, well, maybe the thing that people like about my songs is the tongue-in-cheek, daft stuff. So I thought, if they don't like this, then at least they've gotten out and they can just, okay, I don't like Adam Ross, but I like Randolph Sleep. So making it a different thing. But yeah, I think it's just, as you say, I've got a tendency to try not to be too earnest, but I don't know. I wrote the lyrics and I was happy with them. That's the main thing, really. Like, as a songwriter, I'll put out something if I'm happy with it, and usually when I try and write serious or earnest songs, then I'm not happy with them.
It does seem like an Adam Ross album, not like songs that maybe would have fitted with Randolph's. Like, they do seem like kind of, on the whole, kind of different songs. Are you going to tour them? Is that, because I think you're going out with Randolph's Leap, aren't you? That's going to be happening.
Yeah, we've got a full band gig in February, 26th of February at Stereo in Glasgow. But yeah, that was another sort of impetus for doing the solo album, is that solo touring is a lot more practical and affordable, and I think having material under my own name is quite useful for promoters and venues, and it's an album that can be replicated live without too much bother. So yeah, that was important for me. So I'm trying to book as much as I can for this year. It's still quite weird at the moment. I think there's a massive bottleneck of rescheduled gigs and venues not quite sure what they're doing. Yeah, it's not ideal, but I've got a few dates in the calendar for March, and then I'm looking further into the year as well.
Yeah, because you were due to play for Celtic Connections, weren't you?
Yeah, I was quite disappointed about that one. I think I missed the change in restrictions by a few days.
Yeah, I know, because it was changing right up to almost the day before the festival began about what they could do.
Yeah.
Do you? So you don't ever think that these songs will have a, inverted commas, full band round them? They are as you've written them, and that's how they're meant to be.
Yeah, I think so. I can't really imagine them in a Randolph Sleep set. So yeah, I don't think there's much prospect of attacking them with a full band. But I've tried, like, I do a lot of home recording, and like, I do a thing on Patreon where I release a new recording every month, and it's sometimes a new song, it's sometimes an old demo, but quite often it's like a reworked arrangement of a song that people might know. So I've done a couple of more sort of full band sounding versions of these songs. And yeah, I've always enjoyed messing around with stuff like that, treating the lyrics and the melody as one thing, and then the arrangement and the production as something else. But I don't know, I think the stripped back approach to this album works for some reason. And I think a lot of that is down to Pedro's fiddle playing. Like, I feel a bit bad calling it a solo album. I feel like it should be Adam Ross and Pedro Cameron, maybe, because he's added so much texture and sort of nuance and emotion to the songs that weren't there when I sent them to him. So he deserves a big credit for that.
Well, absolutely. And for those listening who don't know the name Pedro Cameron, who may know the name Man of the Minch, that's his kind of band that he plays under. Fantastic musician, absolutely. When did you write these songs? Are these pre-lockdown COVID songs? Were these things that you'd already written?
Yeah. So they were written tail end of 2019, I think. I remember playing a few of them live at Celtic Connections in 2020. That was at the Hazy Recollections thing that used to happen. And that was a sort of dipping my toe in the water of, it was a solo gig, and it was under my own name, and I was trying these new songs, and I was happy with the response to them. So I thought, right, I should do something with these. And then I recorded them in early 2020. I was working on a teaching project with the musician Jenny Sturgeon, and we ended up staying in a castle when we were doing this project. And Jenny had a posh microphone with her that I asked if I could borrow over the course of a couple of evenings and recorded, I think at that stage it was maybe 7 or 8 songs that had been sitting on the shelf, and I didn't know what to do with them, and I tried recording them in my sort of usual approach, and it just wasn't really working properly. But I think the combination of the sort of natural acoustics of the room in this castle and the mic I was using, it sort of captured the songs quite well, and I was happy with them. So that allowed me to take the next step and add some fiddle and record a couple more and call it an album.
And that idea about you going on stage with your solo stuff rather than with the band, is there a kind of increased concern about that? Or do you feel more open, for want of a better word?
Yeah, I feel more open. Through the last few years, I've tried to diversify my songwriting more. I've done a couple of albums under a country pseudonym, A.R. Pinewood, and I did an online collaboration with Gareth Perry, who used to be in Randolph Sleep. We were called the Polychromes, and we did an EP and a Christmas single, just over Zoom and Dropbox. So yeah, I think it's been quite rewarding for me as a songwriter, because trying to get out of the habit of just doing the same thing over and over again. In terms of live performance, I'm not too concerned. I think, as I mentioned before, gigs with the full band are less cost effective, and there's more logistics involved. We've had changes of circumstances in the band. More of the band have kids now. Some of them have moved house. We're more spread out. Everyone's got other work commitments and stuff. So I have more time available to play gigs on my own. But no, my plan is to keep doing both.
I was thinking before we spoke, this isn't Adam's first solo stuff. And then I'd forgotten it was under A.R. Pinewood. So that's what confused me. But these were released on Lost Map, weren't they?
Yeah, it was a short-lived anonymous side project. And then I came clean pretty early on. And yeah, those could have been the first Adam Ross recordings, but there's a lot of auto-tune and vocal effects on those albums, and it was Johnny Pictish Trail. It was his suggestion that I do it as an alter ego and sort of create a character around those songs. But again, that sort of just introduced the idea of doing something that wasn't Randolph Sleep, and the rest of the band didn't seem to mind. It sort of cleared the path to go ahead and do something as myself.
Yeah, it seems like a kind of clever way of doing it, about going solo, but not quite. And then you can see how everyone feels about it.
Yeah.
And in a moment, we're going to play Alice and Christine, which is a great example, I think, of the songwriting that people might be more used to, because there's a real, I think from your songs that you clearly enjoy language and playing with language. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's usually my way into a song, at least in terms of lyrics, is doing a bit of sort of problem solving and, messing around with words and rhymes and things like that.
Well, this is a great example of it. And before we hear it, I just want to say thank you, Adam, for taking the time to have a chat.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
And this is Adam Ross and Alice and Christine.